you've got questions, he always has an answer. It's Sean Hannity, this afternoon at 2, right before Joe Walsh at 5 on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So Senate Republicans unveiled their Obamacare replace yesterday. Mitch McConnell explaining it in general terms and drew the immediate rebuke to varying degrees from 4 conservative Republican senators: Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Ron Johnson, Ted Cruz. But they're open-minded on it, although Rand Paul, discussing the topic yesterday, seemed to have a pretty strong, principled opposition to what Republicans in both chambers are trying to do on Obamacare replace.
My opposition has been principled in the sense that I think that the marketplace works better. I think freedom works better than coercion. And I think the federal government shouldn't be giving any money to insurance companies. Insurance companies made $15 billion in profit last year. The new Republican bill will give them $110 billion to bring down prices. But to me, that's sort of a ludicrous economic concept. That would be like telling America new cars cost too much, so we're going to have a stabilization fund so your new car will cost less, or food costs too much, or any number of things, education, and we're going to subsidize the cost to bring it down. It sort of ignores the fact that our annual budget is $500 billion in debt. I don't know how we're going to pay for all this new spending.
And by contrast, Avik Roy, writing in Forbes on the proposal, concludes his analysis with this question to conservatives, both in the Senate and generally, reviewing this. Any Republican conservative in the Senate who's thinking of voting no on this bill has to ask themselves a couple of questions. How many times in your life will you have the opportunity to vote for a bill that fundamentally transforms 2 entitlement programs? How often will you get to vote for a bill that cuts spending by hundreds of billions of dollars? How often will you get a chance to make a difference for millions of your constituents who are struggling under the weight of rising premiums and exploding deductibles? Transforming the 2 entitlements, Roy, of course, is talking about Obamacare and Medicaid. So which is it? Is are Roy's leading questions correct, or is Rand Paul correct? For a distillation on the topic, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend C.S. Tucker, C. Stephen Tucker, who's the founder and principal broker for healthinsurancementors.com.
And he makes everything more explainable.
Yeah, so C.S., thanks for joining us. And Avik Roy or Rand Paul, who's closer to the truth?
Good morning, Dan and Amy. I really appreciate Rand Paul ideologically, as well as Senator Cruz and Mike Lee and Ron Johnson. They're bulwarks to government spending, and they serve a very important purpose in this country. However, we also have to live in reality. And the reality of what Avik said in his piece in Forbes, which I'm glad you quoted, is exactly right. We are advancing the flag with the Senate bill and the House bill, but we have to do that because we have to live in a reality where the Senate is the most deliberative body on planet Earth, and it's meant to be that way. So we're going to be negotiating in our system of government, in our form of government. We're going to have to compromise on certain things with those who may not be as far right as the rest of us. And we have to come to some sort of agreement in order to advance our flag. And what I mean by advancing our flag is the fact that we are killing all of the Obamacare taxes. This is a big deal. We're killing the individual and employer mandates. Another big deal. These things were hated by most Americans, where the IRS is empowered to penalize you if you do not buy an overpriced product designed by the federal government that you may not want. So these are good things. There are other good things. We're getting rid of one of the largest line item budgets on any state's budget, and that is Medicaid expansion, where we place people who do not have dependents onto Medicaid, and who are not disabled, who are not blind, who do not have children, and we've rolled them onto Medicaid, more than 600,000 in the state of Illinois, blowing up our budget. We're going to roll that back.
But now in Medicaid, just let's pick that up for a second. The House bill would freeze expansion in 2020 and limit it to current enrollees. The Senate bill would begin the rollback in 2021 over 3 years and give the state the option to choose between block grants or per capita caps, but both would curb their overall spending ostensibly. So which of those two options, thinking about the conference, if this does pass the Senate, does the better, quicker job of reforming Medicaid?
Well, there's a quicker and then there's the fairer, right? So the House bill just said, we're going to kill it right away and get rid of it. But it didn't provide an off-ramp for people who will be losing that Medicaid coverage. The Senate eventually rolls back completely Obamacare Medicaid expansion, but it provides a very unique option, which Ovik and I and other policy wonks have been asking for, and what the governor of Wisconsin did, Scott Walker. Those people who lose Medicaid under the Senate bill will be offered health insurance tax credits to buy private health insurance. So they won't be limited just because their income is low. So that'll be a huge improvement to about 2.5 million people who live in states that did not expand Medicaid. You know, they're stuck between 100% of federal poverty level and 138% of federal poverty level. So they can't qualify for Medicaid, and they can't qualify for private health insurance.
So is this where the heart of the bill comes in, that we're showing more compassion?
Yeah, I would say it's more compassion, or as the president says, more nice. You know, however.
Yes, more nice. Yes,
I like more nice.
It provides an off-ramp for those people, so they're able to actually get a private health insurance policy where the doctor is actually willing to take it, as opposed to Medicaid where they're not. Right. So that's a big deal. So is it more compassionate? I believe it is. But both bills eventually establish the goal that we want, and that is to roll back Medicaid expansion and then, of course, provide the states with innovative options to redesign their Medicaid program so they can do things like states like Indiana have done with their Medicaid program. Instead of a flat fee-for-service program where every dollar the state spends, the federal government spends.
Now,
and in that case, there's no impetus to reform Medicaid at all.
So moving off Medicaid to tax credits for purchasers in the individual marketplace, there's a difference between the Senate and House bills as well, where Paul Ryan had flat tax credits to provide identical assistance to the poor as to the wealthy. The Senate version has essentially age and means tested tax credits up to 350% of poverty level. Is that an enhancement, and if so, why?
A tremendous enhancement, and that's something Ovik and I and others have been pushing for, because the left had concerns about the House bill, and some of them were legitimate. One of them was, if you provide a flat tax credit based simply on your age, taking into consideration no other factors like where you live. For example, if you live in Massachusetts, the cost of health insurance is going to be a lot more than if you live in Texas or even in Illinois. So the House bill didn't take any of that into effect, and then it didn't take into effect the most important factor, and that was how much you make. So the same flat tax credit would go to a millionaire of $2,000 in that age group as it would to somebody who was poor. So the means testing the tax credits means that whatever your income is, the less money you make, the more of the advanced premium tax credit you're going to get to make health insurance more affordable. So the people who are, many of them my clientele, who are the working poor, are constantly struggling to stay out of Medicaid because Medicaid is such a disaster. And if they can get just above $16,248 for an individual, they can get off of Medicaid and actually get private health insurance. But if you just make it $2,000 flat based on their age, they're not going to be able to afford that health insurance. Mm-hmm. So means testing and tax credit provides them with a tax credit that is more affordable for them. It makes health insurance actually affordable and maintainable. And that's what this bill does.
All right, Senator Ted Cruz yesterday was concerned about premiums. He wanted to keep them low. Is this a guaranteed affordable premium?
Well, affordable all depends, again, based on income, right? Mm-hmm. The people on the lower end of the income scale are going to find health insurance much more affordable than those who are in the upper end of the income scale. And we know that because the Senate bill changes the cutoff point for when someone can qualify for an advanced premium tax credit. It used to be 400% of federal poverty level. Now it's 350%. And we're doing that because, of course, we're trying to save money. So, yes, it's going to be more affordable. The fact that we're changing the benchmark plan from a very expensive silver plan, or in our state, our benchmark plan is a gold plan, and we're allowing the states to use a bronze plan, a much cheaper plan as the benchmark plan. It's going to be responsible for at least a 15% cut across the board on private individual health plans. That alone is going to make a difference.
What about what Rand Paul had to say in criticizing specifically this insurance industry stabilization fund of another $100 billion and the idea that comparing it to other essentials of life like food, why would we be propping up insurance companies and essentially providing a moral hazard by having a federal government backstop to their policy offerings and pricing?
Yeah, and he's exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy here if you compare apples to apples. We were screaming as conservatives against the 3 R's provision, the massive wealth redistribution between taxpayers and health insurance companies in the risk abatement programs, which ended in 2014, where we were handing all of this money to health insurance companies to prop them up. Well, now we're going to give them over $100 billion more of our money to prop them up. But why are we doing that? We're doing that because if we don't bring private health insurers back, everybody's going to be on Medicaid. And that's something we don't want. We're willing to pay to ensure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, but if the system makes sense, the larger proposal with the tax credits and the like, then why wouldn't those insurance companies see a market opportunity with a more stable health insurance marketplace and come back to the market to take advantage of it?
They would if we could go forward maybe 3 or 4 years from now, which is why you see a lot of these programs in the Senate bill starting to phase out after a period of time. But they can't now. Now we have destroyed the individual market. We have absolutely destroyed it. We've lost Anthem now in Indiana. We've lost Harken Health, which was our fourth of only 4 options we have left in this state. We have destroyed the market. There has to be an impetus, and I mean a strong impetus, to get the health insurance industry back into the individual market so we can once again get some competition back, to get some options back. Right now, without a cash incentive for them to come back, they are not coming back. I can tell you that. I speak to them on a regular basis. They're not coming back without an incentive to do so.
So, speaking of incentives, if there's no mandate for insurance coverage, do you think people are going to sign up? I mean, I know they say there'll be a 30% surcharge on lapsed coverage, but is that enough?
Well, that's a concern, Amy. I don't see that in the Senate bill. And I'll tell you what, if they don't put a penalty in there, an underwriting loan for system gamers, people who wait until they're sick to buy health insurance, like people who would buy car insurance after their Maserati's destroyed, insurance doesn't work that way. So if you do not provide a penalty for system gamers, the whole house of cards will fall, right? Because there will be no impetus in the future for anyone to keep health insurance any longer than when they need it, right? And insurance does not work that way. So I do hope by the time that this bill gets to the conference committee, the House bill gets to the conference committee, and somewhere out the back end comes a final bill, there better be some sort of penalty for people who attempt to game the system, or the whole thing is shot.
All right. He is C.S. Tucker, the founder of healthinsurancementors.com. And unlike Nancy Pelosi, he actually reads the bills. C.S. Tucker, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan and Amy.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're a